So, as chairperson of the SATAA, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this new experimental venture that we've come up with called Lunch and Learn. So it's meant to be sort of casual. I've got my green tea and jasmine. I know some people have cheesecake, they've confessed, just to make us, mugs of something. And what a better person to start us off, but Diane Salters has been in TA for many, many moons. And it's fascinating how you've got the richness of bringing so many things into your TA thinking. And certainly you've shared a little bit with me, particularly over the COVID years, around TA and logosynthesis and how they are beautifully mixed together and one builds on the other. So really fascinating to hear more from you. So without any further ado, over to you, Di.
Right, well, thank you very much. And it's lovely to be here. And I won't bother with introductions because I think I see a lot of people who already know me or know something about me. So I'll just plunge straight in. The one thing I will say is that all of you will know that I am certified as a TSTA, so well qualified to teach in TA. I'm not certified as a trainer in logosynthesis. I have, however, attended many trainings and supervision with Willem Lammers, the creator of logosynthesis, and was invited to his masterclass 2 years ago. So I'm very keen to share what I have learned with you, as I find logosynthesis a really interesting companion to my TA practice. You will not need to take notes unless you want to, as I will make mine available to you and we'll have the recording. But do have a pen and paper near you for the exercise towards the end, and have some water near you to drink as needed. I will speak for about 20 minutes. Then we will have questions. In the meantime, just note your questions and don't lose them. And then I will invite you into an experience of logosynthesis. A very gentle experience, but you choose whether you join in on it or not. And I invite you to take good care of yourself in the process. Only share at the end what you feel comfortable to share. And if anything emerges for you afterwards, I hope you will take it to whatever source of support you normally get, or you can contact me by email if you want to share anything more that didn't get a chance to be shared. So I hope that's all relatively clear contracting. So logosynthesis was created by Willem Lammers, whose early training was in TA. He's a TSTA, and he was actually at Metanoia in London for some of his training a few years after me. So that's a nice point of contact between us, although we hadn't seen each other for many, many years until relatively recently establishing connection again. It was during his years working as an experienced psychologist and psychotherapist that he discovered the power of energy, or became alerted really to how important energy was in working with healing and self-development. He tells a story about his beginning, which was, as which so often we learn from our clients. She was a client that Willem was asked to see alongside one of his colleagues, because this experienced colleague felt completely stuck, as did the client. She had no memory whatsoever of an accident she had falling down some stairs in a railway station 5 years earlier, but had clearly been very affected by it ever since. She was fearful, uncertain, disoriented often, and as if she just couldn't cope with life. She was seen by various neurologists and doctors who could find no physical cause, and psychiatrists eventually diagnosed a personality disorder, which is what they tend to do when in doubt or flummoxed. But she and her husband remained convinced that this was related to the accident. She would, for instance, quite often put the key a few inches to the wrong side of the keyhole when trying to get in, or miss something by a few centimeters when she was reaching for it. So she was disoriented at that sort of level as well as very anxious. She described herself as crazy, and using her Swiss dialect, this was expressed as beside her shoes. As she talked and he listened and his mind wandered a little, Willem saw a light shadow like a wisp of fog to her right. Could she literally have sent part of her energy outside of her body in the shock of the fall? This seemed at once a simple and obvious explanation, but surely absurd. Nevertheless, he decided to go with his intuition and the client's own words. He invited her to return to her physical body. She experienced great fear at doing this, but eventually, in the safe holding environment of her familiar therapist and Willem, managed to do this. She immediately, with tears of joy and relief and everything else, experienced great relief and could immediately recall, and subsequently recalled more, details of the accident. Now, this may seem unusual and strange to anyone who's not experienced this kind of process of different levels of energy within the body. I have experienced myself personally something very like this, where with a different form of energy healing, where I literally experienced my emotional body completely outside of all my other bodies, as that therapist tended to think of them. But I also know that at an everyday English level, not unlike her Swiss dialect, we all know this. We often say things like, I was beside myself with rage. I got such a fright, I jumped out of my skin. I think I'm behind myself. All kinds of colloquialisms that we use that I think give an indication that we have some sense of how this actually, how energy works both in our body, around us, and between us and other people. So back to logosynthesis. I offer you a definition. Logosynthesis is an integrative approach to healing and development to restore the flow of life energy. The use of the power of words to shape reality enables people to resolve disturbing memories, fearful fantasies, and limiting beliefs, as well as numerous other physical and mental issues. People who arrived late may not have heard me say that you will get my notes as well as the recording afterwards, so don't feel too worried about getting it all down. So that's the formal definition. And of course, in ancient Greek, logos means mind or meaning or word. Synthesis means putting together or compilation, composition. And in logosynthesis, the two come together to talk about the integration of fragments of ourself into a more integrated and harmonious whole self through the power of words and through the understanding of words. It's not a coincidence that logosynthesis, that the word is reminiscent of Assagioli's psychosynthesis or Frankel's logotherapy, both of which were very influential on Willem. And both these therapists paid close attention to spiritual aspects of humans in their therapeutic work, seeing humans as biological, psychological, and spiritual beings. This is important in the basis of logosynthesis. So I'm going to read a passage to you now that I think will sound almost like TA. As children, we are impacted by many people and events that may not serve our own natural self. The result of these impacts, sometimes traumatic and overwhelming, may, given our developmental lack of capacity to process what we experience or lack of emotional support, result in various adaptations of disconnect or dissociation from our feelings, sensations, or parts of ourself. This goes along with the development of introjects and corresponding patterns of belief that help us to adapt at the time may eventually become limiting. We further reinforce these by giving them meaning as best we can, developing stories that attempt to make sense of our experience. I think you'll agree with me that could have been written by a transactional analyst. Sounds so close to the way in which we would describe the process of ego development, ego state development, script formation, and so on. But there is more to logosynthesis than that, that is very different, and I think a valuable addition to TA. First off, one of the most important things that we know it is really not TA is because they don't talk about ego states. And you know what Burns said about people who don't talk about ego states. They are definitely not transactional analysts. So we know that for sure. So I'll give you what Willem calls his elevator pitch about logosynthesis. We are energy. Energy is either frozen or in flow. Energy either belongs to you or it doesn't. And words move energy. That's the four absolutely essential elements of logosynthesis. You'll notice the emphasis on energy and words. I'm going to broaden this definition slightly in a way that will include other important philosophical assumptions in logosynthesis, and that will, I hope, offer a bridge to TA. I would say that the theory and practice of logosynthesis, why do I always find theories that have terrible names? I mean, transactional analysis and logosynthesis, dear Lord, anyway, they're worth it. Rests on four important philosophical assumptions. Everything is energy, we are energy, and so is everything around us. 2, our own natural energy is connected to the source of life. In logosynthesis, this is called essence, and knows where it belongs. The material world and all its cultural concepts, which in logosynthesis is referred to as the matrix, impacts us, causing adaptations that may bind our energy or entangle it with the energy of others. It's a slightly different idea from symbiosis, but there's definite possibilities in there for the entanglement of energy. Words can shift energy, our own and that of others, so we can claim our own bound or frozen energy and release what is not ours. Those are the 4 pillars that I'm going to be looking at, and just give you some idea of differences between TA and LS, which I'm going to call them for short. Eric Berne wrote memorably about energy. I'm sure you will all remember the confusion about the antics of monkeys. Despite the confusion, however, he did make very clear the distinction between bound energy, unbound energy, and free energy. The aim of therapy was to contain the unbound energy when it leaked or lashed out in inappropriate ways, and then to free the energy bound in old experiences so that people could function from integrated adult and become more autonomous. Yet for all this interesting and very valuable piece about energy, energy remains something of a footnote in TA, apart from 1 or 2 writers like Nancy Porter Steele and Ken Mellor, who took it rather further. Logosynthesis, on the other hand, places energy first and center, all the way. So rather than focus on the details of memories, beliefs, decisions, script meanings, as we might in TA, the emphasis is on locating where energy is bound, locked up in any of those thought forms, and releasing it using the logosynthesis sentences. More of them later. They're a key part. We'll get to them. Also, just as there's no script analysis, there's also no ego state analysis, as I said before. Introjects that we in TA would talk of in terms of structural parent are talked of as energy patterns. Dissociated parts that we would describe as aspects of the child ego state are described again in terms of frozen energy patterns. So I'll read another little quote from Willem to clarify this. The way in which logosynthesis looks at these introjects and the corresponding dissociated parts is completely different. We consider them as thought forms, static energy structures in space, which deny current reality and prevent dialogue between the person and actual events in the present. Understanding dissociated parts and rigid introjects as energy structures in three-dimensional space, as opposed to abstract cognitive parts of mind, is an important feature of logosynthesis and a crucial difference with TA. So to get an idea of what's meant by this, I invite you for a moment or two to remember and bring to mind your grandmother or some other important person from your past, preferably somebody that you can think of as smiling on you, and enable them to be as vivid as they can be in your imagination. You may see them very clearly. You may hear their voice. You may even feel their energy around you. And if you were to imagine them in space, they would be a 3D form. You may even recall the smell of them. So this could be a very vivid, very real, energetic experience. Does that give you an idea of what we're talking about here? Yeah? Okay. So the second point, the second pillar, our own energy is connected to source, to essence, and knows where it naturally belongs. Eric Berne wrote relatively briefly about physis, the Greek word for the life force, for source, or if you like, essence, a non-material force that may be intuited or experienced, but is very difficult to quantify. Patricia Clarkson took the concept further and wrote about it rather beautifully, and many TA people now would acknowledge it as a key factor in what guides or even propels people towards health and wholeness. As Eric Berne said, we may do some work, but it's not we who cure. Some authors locate it in the free child as our most organic connection with our true nature. However, you could still read many TA articles and books that have no reference to the spiritual dimension of the human experience. It's not absolutely vital as it is in logosynthesis. There it is, our connection, our awareness of essence and connection to it is vital. And a lack of that leads to suffering. Many of the adaptations we necessarily make in the course of growing up and engaging with the matrix cut us off from essence and our natural connection with it. Re-establishing that connection is essential for our well-being. However we do that, there are many ways that many of us will do that through nature, through some spiritual practice, through those we love, our own vitality. We're all open to that. Third pillar, the material world and all its cultural concepts, the matrix, impacts us, causing adaptations that can bind our energy or entangle it with the energy of others. This is very comparable to the concept of script formation in TA, the development of rackets and the adoption of drivers. All of these are ways of adapting to our family and cultural our cultural systems, and attempting to make meaning and create script. The discomfort or impasse we experience between what our nature longs for and the adaptations we have made for reasons of survival or acceptance or belonging represents the gap between what is authentically ours and what is script. In TA, we would normally spend a lot of time unpacking all the script injunctions, counter injunctions, decisions. We would analyze the racket system memories and fantasies and seek to reveal and express the missing feelings. Logosynthesis does use the concept of drivers slightly differently, but similarly to what we do, but in other respects differs from the TA approach, focusing always on the energy bound in the beliefs, memories, fantasies, or decisions that are the source of the discomfort, and these are treated as frozen energy patterns. And they can be frozen energy patterns from the past. Well, they're always from the past because we made them in the past. But sometimes they're frozen energy patterns about future fantasies, either good or bad, as in racket system. But we made them in the past, so they're all sort of frozen somewhere in our system. Introjects and beliefs indicate the energy of other people or systems that we have taken into our own system, and which prevent us from connecting fully with our true essence and our mission in the world. Dissociated parts of ourselves indicate where our own energy has become bound in frozen reactions and decisions and is no longer freely available to us. So the aim of logosynthesis then becomes the retrieval of all our energy, our own energy, bound up in these frozen forms, and then the removal of energy that is not ours from our system to wherever it should rightfully belong, which we may not know where it is. The aim is the integration with our fullest self, mind, body, and spirit, and full connection with essence, also allowing us to be fully present in the here and now. In TA, we would say in adult functioning, integrative adult. So for instance, the issue of frozen fantasies, the removal of energy that is not ours from our systems. When I'm working with someone, sometimes it may be a memory of one of their parents, or that impacted them very powerfully, and they need to send the non-me energy out. It may be clear that this needs to go to one or other of the parents. But I'm always aware, given family constellation and my work with transgenerational trauma, that it very often probably goes much further back than that. So it seems to me more in tune to say wherever it belongs, because we honestly don't know. And it may have come down a whole generational chain. And so sending it wherever it truly belongs may be the most appropriate thing that one can say, given that it is all a bit of a mystery. However much we think we know, a lot remains a mystery. The fourth pillar, words can shift energy, our own and that of others, claiming and freeing our own bound energy and releasing what is not ours. In TA, we of course understand the power of words, the role of attribution in script formation, the power of naming, the binding spell of stories, the ones we were told and the ones we made up. However, we would use many tools in seeking to shift these various elements of script or reframe memories. We might use two-chair work, parent interviews, redecision work, and of course, always the secure therapeutic relationship is foundational. Logosynthesis also places a therapeutic relationship first and does use some Gestalt processes. But the key tool is the use of the 3 simple sentences that can be applied to any thought forms, energy patterns, or reactions to release bound energy as needed. These have been very carefully crafted by Willem based on his experience. And I have learned that I don't need to mess about with them. Just use them as they are. Logosynthesis also differs from TA in many other therapeutic approaches in its use of distancing language. This may be more familiar to people who work with trauma, where people are invited to distance themselves from the trauma. But I know that in, going for one CTA or something, if you or the client use distancing language, that's oh, no, we can't have that. And but logosynthesis encourages quite a lot of distancing language to prevent people from identifying with exactly what they're seeking to change. I mean, I've often heard people going around talking, oh, my please driver, or my be strong driver, and they really own it tenaciously. And I don't think that's wise. And I really learned from logosynthesis about the value of not identifying with the suffering, not identifying with early decisions, with anything that we actually need to and want to shift. So that's something I've really gained from logosynthesis. Yes, so in the logosynthesis sentences, you will notice that they're framed as this memory or this image or this belief, not my. So we distance, and that's very valuable. Recently, various other tools have been developed but the sentences remain core. And the skill of the practitioner lies in finding which trigger stimulates the discomfort, which memory or decision or whatever image, and applying the sentences to this causal factor rather than to the arising feelings. Sometimes these triggers can be found in more recent traumas like Leonora. Very often, of course, they date from early childhood or even pre-verbal experiences. And in fact, that's when I find logosynthesis particularly useful, where there are no words. Some of you who use EMDR will also know the value of bypassing all the language and the words and going straight to the image or the sensation or whatever is resting with the person. And then the frozen energy pattern can be worked with directly, even if the person does not know its origins or have any words to put to it. In this way, logosynthesis can also work for physical conditions, womb and birth trauma, conception shock, generational patterns that don't start with you, and even past lives. And I've seen Willem do work on all of those fronts with it. And people, once familiar with it, can use the sentences for themselves in many daily situations, which is another aspect that I like about it. As with TA, I always feel with what I valued about TA is that my clients could go away with a whole little toolbox for their own use for the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. And the same is true of logosynthesis. When people know the sentences, they're empowered to use them for themselves. Okay, so let me share the sentences with you on the PowerPoint. Where am I? Share the screen. For the little, is it there? Okay, so these are the sentences. I retrieve all my energy bound up in this belief, memory, symptom, or image, and take it back to the right place in myself. You'll get a chance to work with these shortly. I remove all non-me energy related to this X, whichever it is, from all of my cells, all of my body, and all of my personal space, and send it where it truly belongs. They're said in quite a neutral voice, and people don't have to understand exactly where it should go back to them or where else it should go. The trust is placed in the connection with essence and one's true self to know exactly what one needs to do. I retrieve all my energy bound up in all my reactions to this X and take it to the right place in myself, in the here and now, as an adult person in the service of my mission in this life. I don't always add in the service of a mission in this life, because unless people are familiar with that philosophic kind of assumption within logosynthesis. So as you can see, they're very simple and, in my experience, extraordinarily effective. Okay, stop share. You will get all of that in the notes. You will get it all. So as I say, a lot of trust is placed in the client's own sense of what's right for them and their connection with essence, conscious or unconscious. And the therapist has to be pretty smart, despite the fact that Willem says he has to be stupid, lazy, and slow to be a good therapist. There's something to be said for that, but actually takes quite some skill to identify where to apply the sentences. But one of the ways I think about it is that it's one of the most effective ways I know of disconnecting the rubber bands that can catapult us straight back into a past memory or defense system, just like that. This unhooks them very neatly and elegantly, and also helps with dismantling future fantasies very, very crisply and well. So we now have time for questions. And then we'll go on to our exercise. So please feel free to, yes, Joanna, if you unmute yourself, yeah.
Thank you. I'm absolutely fascinated, and I think you're putting it beautifully. But I have a little query. I work with the left and right brain, and the concepts that we have a left thinking brain and a right, and analysing left brain, problem solving, and an emotional, creative, feeling right brain. And what I'm wondering about is, how come we use left brain language sentences to shift energetic patterns, which I had always thought would be held, and emotional patterns, which I would always thought had been held in the right brain. So that intrigues me. I wondered if you have anything to say about it, Diane.
Yeah, I'm like you, I'm intrigued, because I also think a lot in terms of the two hemispheres and so on. But I'm also very aware that when I write poetry, I use words, but my right brain is leading the way. So it's not as though the right brain doesn't understand words or use words, just differently, I think. And so while it might seem like a very left brain activity to use words, Willem maintains and has done a lot of work and study on different energetic vibrations of different words. And that words themselves can have, like music, different energetic vibrations. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of the Japanese scientist who spoke certain words around for ice crystals, and they formed in very different structural patterns. Now, quite how or why, I don't claim to know, but at the moment, I'm a bit with logosynthesis like I am with a light switch. I don't really understand electricity, but I trust the switch, unless we're having load shedding, of course. So I do think that the right brain is very responsive to language and to word. And when we are told stories when we are a child, it goes straight into our right brain. And I think that's why they're so powerful and so very entrenched. They're not just a little something on top in the left brain only. That would be my response. I don't know what Willem's would be.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Sue? No, she's signaling at somebody else. Any other questions?
Diane, not a question, but just a statement. You know, I find this very exciting, what you're telling us about, because I can already see how I could use it. And it's great. I'm looking forward to experiencing it.
Okay, good, good. Well, maybe I can also tell you a couple of examples of how I've used it that might be interesting. One of my very few one-session cures, you know how Byrne used to write about those, was with logosynthesis, with a businessman who came to see me. And I knew him slightly, so I wasn't willing to take him on as a client. And I said, but I'm needing to practice, so I'll give you one session of logosynthesis, because he'd heard about it. But that's all. I'm giving you one session, and might be a moral in the story for therapists. That's all I'm giving you is one session, and we'll just see how it goes. And he was experiencing difficulty in business negotiations, where he felt himself in some situations just losing all power and just obviously being flooded by child stuff, not able to stay in full adult, and feeling very disempowered and ineffective. And we went back to a childhood memory where he had indeed felt very disempowered, been left behind, been shamed by all the family in some endeavor that was taking place. And this was, the energy was very clear how much distress this caused him as he remembered. So we did the sentences around this, and I wished him well and sent him on his way. And the next week I got a text from him saying, "You've transformed my life. I'm a new man. I was entirely different in this last set of negotiations. This is absolutely amazing." He's continued since then to send me clients, even though I keep telling him I won't want any more, thank you. So that was a very nice, very clear demonstration of how quick and easy it can be. Maybe I programmed him in the beginning, and this might be something to think about, that he had to sort it all in one session, and he did. So there we go. Another example, rather more difficult one, of a woman who had a very difficult childhood, and she sometimes experiences complete, utter abandonment and sense of total annihilation, almost, I think one could say, and has no memory, no words for it whatsoever. So we decided to use the sentences in relation to this experience of abandonment, annihilation. And I asked her to form an image, since she had no words. What was the image she would come up for this? And it was a very deep, dark chasm. So I thought of doing the sentences with that, but it was quite clear that she was too afraid even to get too close to this chasm, to even have it around in her mind, in her experience. She just had to run away. And so I worked instead on the fantasy, her fantasy about how dangerous the chasm would be and what would happen if she approached it. And did the sentences around the fantasy. And then she felt more able to approach the chasm, and then we were able to do some work. I wouldn't say that work is complete, but she certainly felt better and made some shifts as a result of that. So there's two ends, short term and long term. Yeah, Karen.
Hi, I'm curious, as an educator TSTA, where you do script work, but in the present, is there a translation of using the logosynthesis approach in sentences without needing to explore those very early, sometimes pre-verbal experiences?
Absolutely. I mean, Leonora's, for instance, was only 5 years old. It was, the incident, the experience was 5 years old, so she was as an adult. But it's used a lot in coaching, and it would be used in looking at, again, it could be used in fantasies. For instance, Willem did some nice work, and this again is a bit therapeutic, but it's could be related to education as well, with someone who was having difficulty in her relationship. And so he asked her for her ideal husband. And sure enough, she had a fantasy of the perfect husband. And after doing sentences on several layers of that perfect fantasy, it completely dissolved. And she was entirely available for a more real experience with her actual husband. It was very fascinating to watch. So I think you could have a terrible negative fantasy of going for an exam, say. You wouldn't have to go into the history of all of why that was the case. You could just work with that and relieve the fantasy and the anxiety just like that, and face an exam perfectly easily. Or beliefs, you don't have to find out where the belief comes from. I'm going to give you an experience now of working. So if a child had a belief, I'm no good at maths, for whatever reason, you could work on that without ever having to identify exactly which teacher terrorized the life out of him in a maths class, say.
Thank you. Yeah, okay.
Any other question before we go into the exercise?
Diane, I'm just curious, when you talked about the trigger, I totally get cognitive therapy and then energy work. I understand that there's value in both of those. I was really curious about how you decide what the right trigger is, because people can come with lots. So how do you distill what the right one is to work on using logosynthesis?
I think logosynthesis people would say go where the energy is. That you will experience in whatever people tell you, where is the energy? What is activating them in the moment? And in a real way, not in a rackety way. And the fact that you're not working with the feelings anyway tends to help you not get into racket feelings. Although a lot of feelings emerge after the sentences often, but that's not your focus. And like, anything, it takes practice. And if you're a skilled therapist in one direction or a skilled coach, then you'll know where you need to work. And then you just apply the sentences, I would say.
Thank you.
Yes, John.
I'm sat with a musing, but thank you. This is amazing. Thank you so much. I'm sat with a musing as a therapist working with a client in the therapy room and thinking about working with their energy. I'm also aware that I bring my energy into the therapy room, positive, negative, and so on. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that comment.
Yes, obviously we do. And I would say it behoves us all as therapists as best we can to manage our energy as well as we can, not to have it interfere too much with the process. That's part of our skill, is to do that. As far as I know, logosynthesis doesn't look much at transference and countertransference, although they may do in supervision. They do in supervision, they do. I've been in supervision. They wouldn't call it that necessarily, I don't think. But yeah, and sometimes with the best will in the world, we do get in the way.
Yeah.
This is true. And this is why we have to be constantly in supervision and watching ourselves.
Thank you.
I would say.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I think it's important now to move on to the experience. So I'm going to share a screen with you again and invite you to look at this list of beliefs, limiting beliefs. Oh, no, sorry, that's the wrong way. Let me go on one. No, what's happened here? There it is. Yeah, here we go, limiting beliefs. So have a look at these list of beliefs. They're just suggested ones that I know have cropped up with many of my clients. You may find another one that is more current for you. Use your own and do what feels right for you. You don't need to take a moment to choose one. You don't need to delve into the content or argue with a belief at this stage. Just notice it and write it down. Trust your own intuition. To test it, say it out loud and notice its impact on your body as you say it, and notice the quality in your voice. You can just mute yourselves and say it out loud so that you get a sense of it. A moment to choose and to do that. Now ask yourself how strong this belief feels on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 as the highest. Just make a note of that number. Check how distressful this belief feels for you and how it felt in your body and your voice. And again, note it down, 0 to 10. 10 is the highest, make a note of the number. And now set your notebook and your pen aside and make yourself available for the sentences. I will read them out slowly in sections and you will repeat after me. And when I say this belief, you put in your own belief, whatever it was, and then complete the rest of the sentence with me. You may want to close your eyes when I say let the words work, but then open them again for the next sentence, because you're more likely to be able to hear what I'm saying if you can also see my lips, if there's any distractions, poor quality, sound quality. So with eyes open while I start reading. I retrieve all my energy. Repeat that after me. Bound up in this belief. Insert your belief. And take it back to the right place in myself. Let the words work. Second sentence. I remove all non-me energy related to this belief. Third. From all of my cells, all of my body, and all of my personal space, and send it to where it truly belongs. Let the words work. Third sentence. I retrieve all my energy, bound up in all my reactions to this belief. Insert. And take it to the right place in myself. In the here and now, as an adult person. Let the words work. Now check your body again and notice how it feels. Open your eyes and check your surroundings. Ask yourself now how strong the belief feels and make a note of the number. And check your level of distress in relation to this belief and make a note of the number. Also have a drink of water, because it's always good to have water to drink when you're doing energy shifting. And I think, Andrew, we could have the recording off now, if you wouldn't mind, so that people can give feedback or share anything that they may want to share about the experience, anything they noticed.
So I'm thinking of pausing the recording for now, Di, and then if we turn it on for you to sum up some learning at the end, it's still running, but just pause. So
yes. Right. So there is a fourth sentence that can be applied, but you only apply it if you feel really resolved at the end of the work. And that is, I attune all my systems to this new awareness. If it's still sort of a bit iffy, then you don't use it, which is why I didn't give it to you all. But if you feel resolved, that's a lovely sentence to finish with. It's used as and when appropriate.
Can you repeat it, please, Diane?
I attune all my systems to this new awareness.
Thanks.
So I just want to thank you very much. I'm delighted all of you experienced some shift in your number scores of belief and distress. And I just want to finish with Willem's own statement about what he perceives his mission to be, which is to serve people in their healing and development in the gentlest and most elegant way possible. And I think he really has developed something that is profoundly gentle and elegantly simple and swift. So that's why I really value having added it to my own personal toolkit as a therapist and to my life. I use it as well, frequently. So, on time.
Thank you so much, Di. I think I speak for everyone and we're looking at the gestures to show our gratitude. And I think Willem's words really, I see in you as well, that gentlest and most elegant way of how you be you in the world, but in a powerful way, changing things changed. I really admire that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everyone for joining. And this is an advert slot for 30 seconds. If you've enjoyed connecting with like-minded people, we do run other webinars. The SATAA is having a fascinating one in May. Samhita Arni, she's an Indian woman. She's been working in my training group for a while, and she works a lot with Indian mythology. And she's talking about how to liberate our identity through storytelling. Really, it's going to be fascinating. And then later on in the year, our own Kirsty is going to team up with 3 other Indian younger women talking about how TA can support parenting. If you're not, you've got to pay some dollars. If you join the SATAA, it's a perk of membership. Our membership fee is very nominal, so we would welcome you to join. And Kirsty's on the ball. She's actually put our website link in the chat. So please come and play with us some more in this community. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you all here.
And is Lindy Ware going to do something else on another lunchtime thing? My colleague Lindy Ware from Diane Salters has trained in logosynthesis, and so I introduced her to it a few years back, and she's going to do another of these short slots on it, I think.
So I think this will be help me exec colleagues in July. Lindy, we will be picking up and doing a part 2, as it were. Find all of this on our website. So please come and visit and join us.
Yes, good. And bye-bye, everyone. And thank you so much for coming. And I really enjoyed sharing with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Di. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.